Hello and welcome to the Arty Mummy Easy Acrylic Valentine Art Tutorial Part 3. You make my heart flutter. Now here's a quick preview of our finished product today, and let's get into getting that done. So the first thing I'm going to do is have a look at where we left off last time, and I'm just going to add a second layer of paint and brighten any areas that are looking a little bit dull or where we haven't got quite full coverage, and just making sure that they're all nice and vivid and beautiful. And if you want some more in-depth on how to go about this, just go on back to the previous tutorial and follow the same steps, only with a second coat. And in the end here we should have something that looks similar to this. Of course your colours might vary a little bit from mine, but I think we have two lovely little butterflies happening here, and we're ready to move on to our text. So the first thing we're going to do is get our traceable and position it on top of the canvas where we'd like to have it. Make sure that you get it nicely centered, that you've already put your pencil onto the back of it with a nice soft pencil that's going to transfer easily. And I'm just going to do it with my hands and have a bit of a guesstimate, but you can use a ruler if you want. Now remembering that we're going to place a frame around this, so we want to get it nice and centered so that we've got plenty of room around the whole thing to put a frame around. And if you need to readjust, now's the time to do that and get it just exactly where you want to have it. So getting that all nicely taped down, because we don't want it moving. We want to get that lettering nice and precise. So once you've got it all taped into place, you can get a pencil, a pen, any firm object. I've got the back of a brush here to start with, and just start getting some nice firm pressure on each one of those letters. Rub over them really well so that you get a nice transfer of your graphite onto the canvas. And I'm recommending graphite for this where I usually don't, because we're going to use a Sharpie permanent marker to get that down, and the graphite will interfere less with that than charcoal or pastel or anything else that would tend to interfere less with your paint. The paintbrush was kind of scratching a little bit, so I've got the back of a pencil here, just using the edge of that to put a nice firm pressure onto each of those letters. It's got a bit of a flat edge because of the shape of it, so that worked really quite well, except for on the last word where it's slightly darker in the grass. It was a little bit harder to see, so I ended up going back over that with the point of the pencil and just really getting that transfer nice and dark. It was much easier to see on the sky section. So then I'm just going with the pencil and just making sure that I've got all my letters down where I want them. Make sure that I've got nice sharp edges and I can see exactly where I'm going to go, because once you touch your permanent marker on there, there's no going back, no changing it. So making sure that we've got the foundation of a nice, easy to follow transfer there to begin with, and then making sure that we darken that up well enough so that we can see all the parts that we need to see to get in there with that permanent marker and do that lovely neat lettering. So now once you've got all your pencil marks in place where you want them, and you've got everything down so that you can see it clearly, then you can grab your Sharpie permanent marker, one with a nice point but not too fine, so that you can get those nice bold letters down with just a couple of strokes, but not so wide that you're going to be losing the detail of that nice cursive style. So I'm using a double thickness on the downstrokes and a single thickness on the upstrokes, and I found that fairly easy to do. Just go nice and slow and just a point of note, just take care to notice where the letters are thicker and thinner. You might want to put your traceable alongside and use that as a guide as well, just so that you can make sure that you get them all nice and even and that you get some uniformity where you have repeated letters. So I'm going to speed this little bit up because you're going to be concentrating on yours while I'm concentrating on mine, and then we'll move on to the next section. And you shouldn't have a problem at all getting this bit down. Just go nice and careful, take your time, and just follow those letters that you put down in the pencil. So now that we've got all of our letters down, we just want to go back and inspect each one of those and make sure that we've got nice clean edges on all of them. So if you need to touch up anywhere, just nice and careful. I kind of can't stress that enough because it is permanent marker, and once it touches your canvas there's no moving it other than painting over it, and we don't particularly want to redo any areas that we've done as background now. It'll be difficult to get that just the same as everything else. So just go in nice and careful and make sure that you have nice clean edges on all of your letters. Take your time, don't rush, enjoy the process, and then we'll be all done with this little bit. So now we're just going to grab a little piece of damp paper towel and clean up any little bits of leftover graphite that are on the canvas. Make sure that you lift them all off so that it's all nice and tidy again. This is why one of the reasons that I said we can use graphite in this instance, because one, it won't adhere with the marker, and two, it's nice and easy to clean off as long as you're not putting any paint over it, the top of it. So we're just going to just lightly, just gently clean up all the little bits of graphite that might have been outside of where we've covered with the marker, and then grab a towel and dry it off. The next step is to get some tape. Now take notice that the frame will be on the outside edge of the tape, so we can place it fairly close, but just judge where you'll feel like you want that frame happening, and place it down carefully. Make sure you've got it nice and straight. Use that outside edge of your canvas as a guide, or you can measure some guidelines there for yourself if you'd prefer. I just like to kind of eye things and take it from there, but if you'd like to take a measurement then that's perfectly fine as well. But you're looking at the outside edge of your tape, not the inside edge. So just pop your tape on, trim the edges so that you get a nice even square on that outside edge, and just try and judge a nice sort of distance between your letters and your butterflies for that line that you're going to create there. And then as well on the top and the bottom edges, same thing again. Try and get your tape to make a nice masked off area on the outside edge of it. Don't worry too much about the inside edge and where that's landing. Depending on the thickness of your tape as well will also depend on how close you're going to put that to your lettering. Also make sure that you press your tape down nice and firmly once you've got it on there, so that you don't get any bleeding when we put our gold splatter on, and that edge stays nice and neat for you, so that when we put the black outline on the inside of it to frame those words really nicely, that we get a lovely nice and neat frame happening on those words. Once you've got that on, then you can start with the outside part. So we're going to mask off our butterflies and some of our background around that as well, just to stop the gold splatter from going too much onto what we've already painted. So judge a distance of about 1.5 inches or a couple of centimeters there, and just make a fairly even border around the outside of your internal frame. And just again clip that off. You don't have to be quite so neat with this one, but just get a rough area that we're going to mask off around the outside there. So now that we've got it all nicely framed out, we need to mask it off where we don't want the paint going, which is on our lovely lettering and on our butterflies. So you can use whatever you have to hand. I'm using some alfoil, but you can use some paper or anything else, plastic, paper, anything else that you feel like will do the job, just to protect those areas. And get it to the right size. Probably smarter to cut it than tear it, but just get it to the right size and tape that on. Remembering to keep the areas that we're going to be putting the paint on nice and clear. You don't have to really particularly be neat, as long as those other areas that we want to cover are covered. Once we've got that all masked off, we want to just get some tape and we'll cover up that last little bit on the top and the bottom of the framed area. You can just use some tape to do those smaller areas there, and not have to worry about that too much with the plastic or paper or alfoil or whichever you're using. And then we're good to go with some gold paint. So I've just got a metallic gold paint and a toothbrush. Put a little bit of paint down on just a nice sized little blob down onto your palette, and add some water. Work it with your brush until you have a nice runny consistency that you can easily flick into a spray kind of pattern. Now that's just a case of judging it, and it can sometimes pay to do a little practice onto your palette or a piece of blank paper, just to make sure that you've got that consistency how you'd like it to be. Now it should be just so that it comes off the brush with a slight tap, but it doesn't just drip all over the place. So that sort of nice, quite runny but not overly so that it's completely diluted. And then you just want to go around close to the lettering side of your masked off area, and just start really flicking nice and close and getting a real solid splatter that gradually fades off towards the other side of your masked area. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. So we want nice and solid close to your writing, and then going out into nothing towards the other edge. So just try and keep all that nice and close, and just let that little bit of splatter fall a little bit further away naturally. We want to get some nice solid coverage to get a nice firm line up against your frame there. Once we have done this a little bit, we're going to go in with if you've got a ruined brush or a hog's hair brush or whatever the equivalent is at the moment. I don't know what the proper term is for the synthetic version. So I did lose my camera for a minute there, but we've got the hog's hair type brush, this nice sort of stiff one. We're just going to dab that into that same paint and just make sure that we've got that nice firm line along the inside edge of that tape, but still sort of tapering off to the outside edge, so that we've got something that's going off very softly. And then we're going to let that dry how it is, like that. So once that's dry, we're going to take our masking away. Just nice and gently peel that back. Now I notice as I peel this back that I've got quite a hard edge on some of what I wanted to be a soft edge on the outside of the framed area there. So once I've got all of that outside edge taken off, I'm just going to grab my toothbrush again and just a little bit carefully go around and give it another bit of a flick with the brush and just soften it out a little bit and lose that harder edge that's going on there. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit more of my runny gold because that's dried out a bit and pretty much run out, so get that nice runny consistency again. That's going to flick nicely, and I'm just going to use my hand to shield the areas now that I don't want it to be, or using the direction that I'm flicking to make sure that not too much of it goes where I don't particularly want it to be, but just softening out any kind of hard edges that we've got going on the outside there, and just letting that splatter go just a tiny bit further, just to give it a nice soft outline there rather than any hard lines going on. And a bit of an unwanted blob, redo that little bit, and I think we're good now. So now it's time to reveal how our little frame turned out and see if we didn't get any bleeding in there or anything. So we're just going to, once that's dry, peel back the tape and we'll be able to see how that frame's turned out with our writing. So I'm pretty happy with that now. So now we're going to get our Sharpie permanent marker again and a ruler, and we're just going to define that inside edge. I do have a little bit of bleeding going on there because I didn't press it down quite enough, which is why I stress it to you to just make sure that you really firmly press down those edges when you're putting your tape down, because it'll make this little bit a bit easier. So grab your Sharpie and your ruler and just line up along the edge that you've already got there, and you can lay your Sharpie sort of slightly on an angle to get a slightly thicker line, and just nice and carefully at the end so you don't go over, and go back and forth until you've got a nice solid line before you move your ruler. That's important because it's going to be difficult if you do move your ruler to go back and get that line nice and perfect again. So holding that ruler nice and firm and going back and forth until you have a nice solid line without any jagged edges or anything. And go around all four corners like that. You'll find that just makes it really pop out and stand out and frame those lettering that we did beautifully. And just to give it a little bit of extra depth and definition, I'm just going to carefully go into two of the corners on opposite angles and just add a little curvy bit to the frame there, like it's a floating photo framer or something. Just give it a little bit more definition. You can do all four corners if you want to. I liked it with just the two, and I think that looks pretty good. I'm happy. How are you doing now? I'm pretty happy with how it's come out so far. So now it's time to do the accents on the butterflies themselves. So we're going to grab a piece of paper this time and have a little bit of a practice on directional flicking. Now we want to make sure that we get our paint a nice consistency, and we want to make sure that we know which direction our drops are going to go in when we flick with our paintbrush this time. So we won't be using the toothbrush because we want a bolder kind of a splatter this time than the very fine splatter that you get with a toothbrush. And we want, again, the consistency to be so that it's not dripping off your brush, but it does come off with a light tap. So we're just going to mix up a pink that's somewhere along the lines of what you used on one of the butterflies, and just keep mixing it up until you feel like you've got something like what consistency we need. Just check it with a little tap there. And I'll probably need just a little bit more water in this, but we'll check it anyway and see first. So I'm going to give myself a little line there to work from and pretend that's the wing, and start tapping my brush and seeing how. And you're going to make little mistakes like that, touching the paper with the brush. So a little bit of practice can go a long way in this. And seeing how we need to pop the canvas and how hard we need to tap the brush, and how far away from the canvas we want to have the brush, so that we don't end up tapping actually on with the brush itself. And I'm starting to get some of the right kind of splatters there with that nice directional mark, and I can start to see where I'm getting the paint to land in relation to where I'm holding my brush. Now don't be afraid to have a couple of goes at it, to add a little bit more water if you need, and eventually you get the hang of getting it to mostly go where you want it to, and where you can get those nice streaky directional splatters that are a little bit bolder than what you'll get with the toothbrush. Once you're a little bit confident with that, then we'll move back on over to our canvas. Now I figured out that I need to have my canvas kind of upside down and facing almost diagonally to get the kind of splatter that I want to come off the wings, as if they're painted and the paint is flying off them as they fly. And I need to turn my canvas around so that I get that same direction that I got with the paper. The next thing I'm going to do is tear up some little pieces of paper, because I want to kind of mask them off, but I don't want to have it completely covered, or have a hard line sort of going on there. So I want some of the splatter to still land on the butterflies, but I want to control how much is there. We want more of it coming off them than covering up all that beautiful work that we've already done. So I'm just tearing a few pieces of paper and just popping them on there, so that some little bits of splatter will get onto the kind of edges of the wings, but I'm not going to completely sort of obliterate what we've done beforehand. And once we've got that torn and popped on there and ready to go, we can pick up our paint that we mixed earlier just a minute ago, and we know that that's ready to go with the right consistency, and we know what direction we're going to get our splatter to go by hitting it a certain way. Just tap it on the side of your finger, and what you practiced on the paper should work for you really nicely. And here we go, we're just going to try and get some of those nice directional kind of marks, like it's really flying off. If you get any little mistakes like that, you can just get a little piece of paper towel. It's much easier than using your finger, and you can just lift that straight off and continue on with your splattering. You won't notice that there's a slight mark there, because we're going to have lots of nice splattery bits of paint coming off there and making it look really lovely and loose and painterly and really fun. Now once we've got a nice little bit of the dark pink splatter on there, then we're going to go and mix up another shade of the pink and put a little bit of that on as well, so that we've got some light and some dark happening off the butterfly, so it's not all the one colour. And you might want to mix up a little purple as well and add that on too. So we've got some nice variation in the colours that are coming off our butterfly, the same as that we have on the butterfly. Now be careful as well just not to overdo any one colour, because by the time you add all the colours on, you can end up with quite a lot of paint on there, and too much will end up spoiling the effect. Once you feel like you're done with that, we can lift off the paper that we put down to protect our butterfly from the majority of the splatter. Tidy up any little pieces that have gotten where you don't really want them while the paint is still wet, just using a little piece of damp paper towel. And I've still got it upside down, I'm sorry, because that's the way the paint splatters easily for me in this position here. And that's what we worked out with that paper earlier, just having a little practice run with it. And so I'm just keeping it in that same position and just putting down a few little splatters so that just a few spots are coming over on top of the wings and just completing that look of the paint sort of splattering off the wings of the butterfly. So again, don't overdo this, just a little bit of each colour. Once you feel like you're done there, just grab your damp paper towel and clean up any spots that might have got onto your writing area or anywhere else that you don't think it should be. And then we can move on to the next one. So this time I've turned him around because I'm going to be moving myself around the table, because the wings are going to be splattering in two directions, and also because of that I have placed a piece of paper and basically masked off the text area. And we're just going to go through the same process again, just roughly mask off with some paper that you've torn into roughly the right shapes and cover up the majority of the wings of your butterfly, and then start having some fun with flicking the paint. So this time, instead of going with two shades of pink and a purple, we're going to be using blue and aqua and purple. So starting off with the purple, because I've already got that mixed, and just going to stand on the other side of the table and flick for one direction, and then come around to the near side and go in the same process for the other wing. And then I'll move on to the blue and the aqua and just keep flicking it on until I'm happy with how it's coming out. So don't overdo it, and try to just get those nice directional splatters. You can, a little tip for that is to make sure that your brush is reasonably well loaded and give it a nice really sharp tap on your other finger. But that's a nice easy way to get those more definite splatters than what you'll get with a toothbrush or anything, which will give you a very fine sort of sprinkling, which is great for stars and things like that. So since we've already done the one butterfly, we can just speed on through this section, and then we can move on to the next part of this lovely little painting. And once again, we're going to take off the paper and give it just a light splattering of those colours again, just to bring it all together. And now to bring it all together completely, we've got some gold going around the framework of our lettering, so we're going to add some lovely gold accents to the butterflies. So the first thing we're going to do is pop a little bit of splattering around the butterflies just to set off that splashing and tie it in with the other gold. I'm going to go a little bit more carefully with this and just definitely make sure that we don't overdo it and don't get too much of it all over the place. Just a little bit is enough to just set it off nicely. And just like before, we go in with a little bit of damp paper towel and just lift off any little bits that you think might be too much, or it might have landed a little bit too heavy, and just tidy it up a little bit, being very careful though not to sort of smudge it. We just want to tidy up any little pieces that we've got where we don't want them, like say on the body of the butterfly or on anywhere that's going to spoil the look. So now that I've been over both the butterflies with the gold splatter, we're going to put some nice gold accents on them once that's dried. And now it should be looking something like this. So we've got some nice directional splatters coming off the wings, a little bit on the wings to tie it together. It's going slightly over the edge of the gold but not onto the area where the words are. And now we can paint some little gold accents on these guys and just finish it off really nicely. Tie the whole thing together and make it all lovely and romantic. So again, we don't want to overdo this. We don't want to make it sort of all too much and have the gold really overpowering. So all I want to do is go really carefully, make sure that your splatters are really dry, and just go really carefully over the very outer edge of the black parts of the wings. Now I just wanted to mention as well that if you're enjoying my videos and painting along with me and you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It means so much to me when each and every one of you subscribes to my channel. I know I'm only a very small channel at this stage, and I just want to be able to share with you guys and know that you are there watching and painting along, and that I'm helping you to paint and enjoy art. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and share and join my Facebook page, and we'll keep on going with it now, and I won't bother you too much more about that. And then once that is done, we're just going to just touch on the very top edges of the body segments and do nice little fine lines in there just to highlight the body, and a tiny little touch on the tip of each of the antenna, and that should do it. And once all that's done, it should look something like this. Now, just to finish it off, if you remember, I mentioned right at the very beginning that we would leave the edges of the canvas to later. So what we're going to do with those, just to set everything off once again, is paint all the way around with black, and then over the top of that with a layer of the gold. Now we paint black underneath the gold because that will just make it pop and stand out and look so much more vivid than if it was just onto the white canvas. It'll also give it a nice sort of even background if you've got some of the colours or just white canvas in different places around the outside edges. It'll give it a nice even colouring across all of the outside edges to just really frame it really nicely, so you don't have to worry about spending a lot of money on a frame for your canvas, and you can just pop some hooks on the back and pop it up on the wall, or give it to your loved one and they can enjoy it for a very long time to come. A little tip when you're doing the black and the gold around the outside, if you use a nice flat brush and just hold your canvas at a given angle, and if you make each brush stroke coming from the same angle, you'll be able to hit the same angle of the edge of the canvas, if that makes sense, and get a nice even line without having to worry too much about whether you're getting a straight edge around the frame. I'm sure I'm explaining that really badly, but just have a watch of how I do it, and hopefully between my dreadful way of saying it and watching, you can get the idea. So I hope you enjoyed painting this as much as I did, and I hope you leave me a comment. Please let me know how you went with it, and I wish you the very happiest of Valentine's Days, and for your loved ones also. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye bye for now.